Holy crap, you guys! Mob Psycho 100 is back. We're actually back for the final season of the series. It's gonna be sad to see it go, but I'm pretty hyped for it, and after watching this episode, I'm gonna give you guys my first impressions and review and analysis of what happened. We're gonna break it down from beginning to end because there's a lot of stuff to talk about here. In particular, one of them which is really important in all of our lives, and that is career paths. There's some really good insight in this episode. There's some really good stuff we're gonna be breaking down here. So let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, always make sure to subscribe and ring the bell, as we're going to be covering Chainsaw Man next week. And of course, check out my video from today on One Piece. It's a pretty great video, but don't let my opinion stop you on that. Go figure out yourself if you like it or not. Thanks everybody. Let's go ahead, get right into it. Mob Psycho 100 Season 3. Episode 1. So starting this right off, this episode is about Mob choosing a career path. There is a career survey that is being handed out at his school, and he has to decide what he wants to do with his life, basically. And this is something that I don't think most of us watching this show, at least outside of Japan and in those kinds of nations, we don't, especially here in America, we don't do really career surveys. We have things like, you know, a particular day every year, we have a career fair, but mostly those things aren't as helpful as they should be because it's the, American education system. But other than that, we don't have anything like this. We don't have this career survey stuff. We don't try to figure out what we want to be at a younger age. Even if we did, it doesn't really matter because our education system doesn't really work this way. I don't know why I'm talking a lot about the education system, but I think it is sort of important to mention that stuff because I think from an outsider and onlooker from especially America watching this is a pretty interesting episode already because they're tackling a career path from a very different perspective than from what I see in media in America or just from, own people in America. So Mob basically has to nail down in middle school what he's wanting to be for the rest of his life. And throughout this episode, beginning with his club mates here, they all have some sort of career path minus one person, but they at least have an answer for what they want to do or just an answer in general, which their answer would be, I don't know what I want to do. Mob doesn't even have that as an answer. He doesn't have any clue. So throughout this episode, really, this is about Mob learning a life lesson in how to figure out what he wants to do with his career. And this is some great stuff. Obviously, Mob Psycho is really good at life lessons and treating Mob as a character that we can all relate to. And I felt more so than ever, in my opinion, he's really relatable here. We also learned that Tomei is going to a certain school, Yuzu Pepper High School, which I guess is a school made by Paul McCartney and John Lennon. Apparently it requires a standard score of 65 and is one of the top 3 schools of their prefecture. So Mob, he's pretty amazed about just how cool Takane is throughout all of this. And I like as well, he sees Takane's friends as a pepper and a potato. That never gets old. But at the end of this first kind of sequence, yeah, he's at 7% to explosion. So it's building up already in this episode, even though it's honestly sort of kind of a chill episode. I think a very satisfying episode, and I would think his score goes down by the end of this because he kind of unlocks a really important lesson in life here, but it's not my choice. So the writers felt it differently. Not complaining though either. I just think it's an interesting observation with such a satisfying ending of this episode, which we'll talk about obviously later in the video. Reagan, on the other hand, as Mob goes to the office, says Mob is pretty lucky to actually know his future. And you're like, what? So Reagan says that Mob's job is going to be work with Reagan all along. But Mob disagrees with this. Of course he would disagree with this. Why would you want to work with Reagan, of all people? Which sounds like a mean comment, but it makes more sense later in the episode why I'm saying it that way, because Mob is figuring something out here, and it's really, really cool what he figures out by the end. But Reagan decides to basically tell Mob, because Mob's like, hey, Reagan, how did you decide you wanted to do this job for the rest of your life? Obviously going to an important figure in Mob's life, looking for some kind of insight on something. Reagan's like, I decided to start this after my last job where I found it was really boring and I wanted to challenge myself and do something different. Obviously later on, the twist of this segment is that the first time he says it obviously comes off as kind of like, oh, you're not being serious about this, Reagan. You're trying to scam Mob out of something here. You're not being honest, right? But hey, by the end of the episode, I gotta give Reagan some credit here. He's actually legit in this moment, and it's pretty true. And I think that's another really great life lesson for Mob right at the very beginning of the episode here, is just that, yeah, sometimes you just want to do what you want to do because you want to be challenged by it, It's, for example, I just recently learned how to pick up piano, and I think a really good thing they say in this episode is that, if you just do the same stuff you've always been doing and taking the easy path, you're gonna lead a life where nothing changes besides your age. You never really grow. And that's the same with me buying this piano. I bought it because I wanted to learn it. I wanted to challenge myself because I write music. I'm a musician, so I like to do that. And I want to get smarter and have a more diverse catalog of instruments that I'm going to play. I play guitar. I can already play bass. I can play the mandolin. Now I'm adding on piano, and soon I'll be adding on drums. And you know what? Maybe even more instruments in the future. Maybe I'll learn how to sing. You never know. And that's exactly, I think it's so funny because I can relate so closely to this right now. But this is what this episode is really telling you, and what this scene particularly is telling you. I really like that stuff. So they take in a new client who has a cursed statue, which, he apparently is getting a lot of dirty looks from people. He's being cursed by this thing. It's bad juju all around, and all I gotta say is that it's a cactuar from Final Fantasy, but it's like a scuffed version of a cactuar. At least that's what it looks like to me. Apparently it's only 500 yen as well. He paid 80,000 yen for it. Did they mark it up because of its curse? Like, what's going on here? Dude, pick it up. Look at the bottom. Look, did he not inspect the entire statue? I don't know. Either way, it's a cursed monolith to all of his sins or something like that. It's pretty bad, and apparently even Mob is like, yo, put that down, Reagan. You keep touching that. That thing's gonna jump out and bite you. There's some stuff in there you don't even want to see. So Reagan's like, all right, cool. I was not going to exercise this, but now I am because Mob said so. And so I like an interaction here where Reagan is talking to Serizawa, and Reagan's like, I was testing you, Serizawa. Why didn't you say anything? And it's like, he's such a scam artist that he can take a situation where you obviously look and you see like he's wrong and he's a scam artist and he knows nothing, but he can take that, he can twist it with just a little bit of tinkering. It's really funny. It's really, really funny if you kind of observe how he does that. Which is funny as well because the cursed monolith to all of this dude's sins breaks. So Reagan, being the kind of guy he is, takes some rice from mayonnaise and tuna, or rice ball or something like that. I forget what it said on the packaging. Either way, looked tasty. Put some rice on it, and he plops it back together, and they call it the rice grain Big Bang. Big Bang attack! And I'm like, man, this show's great. Next up, Mob talks to his parents about his career path, and his dad's like, just put down whatever you want. You're not going to decide, and you got 10 years, dude. And his mom is like, no, you can't take that too lightly, which shows in this case, Mob really takes from his mother and his father in both instances, but in this one, definitely takes after his mother in terms of his mindset. But his brother gives some really good advice where he says, hey, take a job that takes advantage of your talents and is something that, that you'll enjoy, right? And that makes a lot of sense, but it's not quite hitting with Mob yet. So he even starts to ask around school, people in the body improvement club, what is their career path and their career goal? We'll continue doing this throughout the episode, and all of them have answers, which is sort of sad because it leaves Mob like a stick in the mud. He's a nail that's not hammered down quite yet, and that probably is very weird for Mob to experience. So, Mob is confronted by Mizato on top of the school building. Mizato's like, yo, I know it's you, bro. You're the the one that did the broccoli thing back there when the terrorist attack that apparently was combined with a natural disaster, which is what the government has labeled it as, by the way. Mom's like, what are you talking about? Oh, by the way, what is your career path? And even Mizato, she's like, I'm going to be a journalist and a photographer. And I'm like, that is literally perfect for you because that is literally your character. You are literally a journalist character. You're able to figure out clearly that you know Mob's secret, that he's a psychic to some degree, or, well, something going on with him, right? So that's a really cool thing. I like that. I like that about Mizato. Once again, Misato's a really, really fun character in this. She really adds a lot of drama and tension in a really awesome and unexpected way. But we learn from this scene that people are actually worshiping the gigantic broccoli in the middle of the city, and it's become a place for like a religious cultish kind of movement, as we see by the end of the after credits scene. But we basically learn that, hey, people are calling this broccoli the divine tree, and I'm like, Elden Ring? Is the Elden Lord going to be inside the broccoli? Who knows? Who knows? So Regan goes, along with Serizawa and Mob, of course, they go to work with a new client, and this client is a piece of work, my friends. This guy's not only a hoarder, he's balding, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it really adds to this kind of whole thing. It really paints a picture for him, and definitely in terms of his character design. Cherry on top, or as I should say, bowl on top. Ball jokes. So this guy, he says he's cursed. He has nightmares, sleep paralysis, and he gets cavities no matter how much he brushes, even though he smokes like a freaking smoker, I guess. He even tried to touch his co-workers' butts. He got fired. Don't do that. Even an evil spirit chased his girlfriend away when he told the story about how his girlfriend was all on board until he told her he was broke. And I'm like, what? Dude, and he shows a picture of her. I'm like, of course! She doesn't care about you. What do you mean? She's there for stability and money. Like, how could you not see that a mile away? But, it is this guy. This guy who's literally blaming, basically, I could go down the list here. Like, he just keeps losing hair. He's surrounded by garbage, and it's his legacy. That's what he calls it. And he sleeps better with it around him. I could keep going on, right? But the whole thing with this guy is that he's blaming his issues on other people. But the thing about the twist here is that, yeah, he does have these issues, and they have definitely caused him a lot of harm. But they see a picture, which is, they pick it up and a cockroach scurries out, which is that right there. I don't know if you've ever been in a house like one of these. I have a couple times in my life. You gotta do what you gotta do, pay the bill sometimes, but that's actually what happens. They go under anything. Cockroaches are bad. Super bad. Awful things. But even his picture, while he's still bald at a young age, clearly he had something going on. He used to be a rebel in his young life. He had a cool jacket, he had a cool car, but now not so much at 50 years old. Not so much. His life actually really does seem pretty bad. Comparatively speaking, he looked happy before, but now he's not. And yeah, he blames his stuff on other outside external things, but yeah, it's just an issue. And because of this, he has this existential crisis. It goes in full effect, and he talks about how, like, at 50, I've got nothing to live for. I picked the easy way out. I picked the easiest path provided to me, and because of that, I didn't grow as a person. I didn't progress. I stayed stagnant and the same. And that's a really horrifying thing to realize when you're a 50-year-old dude. You realize, oh crap, I did the wrong thing in life. That's life. You make one wrong decision, one wrong choice, and if you don't correct it quick enough, you'll spend, until you're 50 and you realize I messed up and I didn't do what I should have done to get where I should be by now. That's something that scares me to death. As a person who is in his 20s, Jesus, good God, this episode made me think about some stuff, and I was just like, oh God, more anxiety. Jesus. I already scheduled a session with my therapist, by the way, so I should be fine, but you get the point. So basically, the exercise, the giant Mario plant, makes everybody want to go to sleep and get really lazy, which, hey, I mean, the dude was right. He was cursed by a spirit. I can't blame him there. He was right. He got something right. But Serizawa, I apologize for my pronunciation. He talks about how, like, oh, he's freaking out too. At 30 years old, he doesn't have anything. He's got nothing. And what I think is really cool here is that Reagan and Mob back him up. They back up their bro, as they should. They from that third person perspective, they give him some knowledge because it's his experiences, right? It's his perception of things and his perspective is that he's done nothing. But Regan and Mob are like, no, dude, you got like a really cool job where you get to hear a lot of stories, you get to learn a lot, and Regan's even like, dude, you realize it at 30 that you're kind of lucky in that sense. Like, you are very cognizant of where you're at. And while that scares Serizawa in the moment to have a realization that, oh, I could be this 50-year-old guy, it's good that he realizes now that it's not so bad because he's cognizant of it and he's making efforts to not go through with this lifestyle and he can course correct pretty much. But even Mom's like, basically like, you're fine. Like, you're okay. Like, you don't need to be some perfect person by the age of 30, which I think is a huge problem in our society. Tons of kids growing up thinking by age 25, you gotta basically speed run life and already have like 3 businesses and be on their way to retirement by 40. That's ridiculous. Humans don't live like that. Society doesn't work like that. And it's stupid to put that expectation upon people, which I think is what Serizawa was dealing with and what their client was dealing with to a certain extent. This brings us to the end of the episode where basically Mob has a realization because he's talking to his teacher about his career path and his teacher's like, well, you tried your best, and the light bulb goes off with Mob. He's like, oh, that's right, I did. And what he learns by talking to his teacher and having all these experiences is that, even talks to Regan later on about this, that really goes full circle with it as well, and I'll add that into this discussion here. But basically Mob learns that just to do whatever he wants and whatever he's doing to try his hardest and be the best that he can, because that's the best anyone in life can do. He's making the right choice already by being as worried as he is, and he's already making the right choice already by seeking help and looking out for examples and stuff like that to try to get an idea of a career path. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as you're trying new things, you're challenging yourself to grow. That's really the point of what this episode is trying to tell Mob and trying to tell us, the viewers. If you're remaining stagnant, if you're too scared, or if you're too lazy and you're not doing enough, that's not enough. That's not going to cut it. You're remaining stagnant. But if you're continually growing, reinventing yourself, being as open-minded as you can for change and stuff like that, by the end of your life, you're going to have a sense of fulfillment by taking the harder path, the more riskier path. And of course, you can minimize risks very easily, so it's not all too risky, especially if you have friends and a good support group and family. But you take the challenges of life that are given to you, and you try to make something the best you can out of it. Remaining stagnant, you can't do that. You're stuck in one place and you remain the same forever. And that in of itself is a nightmare and a waste of life. So in my opinion, this was a beautiful episode. This was an amazing episode of Mob Psycho 100. It's sad to see this series go after this season, but all good things, they don't last. That's for certain. And as this episode says, sometimes you gotta move on, because moving on is a challenge. So with that being said, what did you guys think about this episode? What did you think about the messaging in this episode in particular and how it relates to your own life? Or there are some challenges in your life that you've had to overcome recently? Please put down the comments below. I'd love to read them, hear about what you guys have to say, and remember just to, keep it real, all that stuff in life, and do the best you can, because as this episode says, just don't remain stagnant. Keep going, keep growing, and that's what I do, and that's what I think everybody should do at the end of the day. So thanks everybody for watching. Be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. Check out my channel, because next week we're going to be doing that Chainsaw Man. I already got tons of videos on Attack on Titan. I got a new One Piece video that came out today, so I'd love it if you guys check that out. And as well, follow me on patreon.com/SeaTactics and become a patron member to get access to those One Piece videos 3 weeks before everybody else does on the live feed. Thanks everybody for watching. See you next week. Bye-bye.